this is at our clinic here in Vancouver. A colleague of mine, Julia, another physio here, who's awesome. We do a journal club every 3 to 4 weeks together, and we present to each other on topics that we're currently looking into. So a lot of our current research on our own right now we decided on was the cervical and thoracic spine. So what I did the other day is present on this paper, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Um, so I'm showing you what I went over with her yesterday, and that is this paper. So the paper is Clinical Reasoning Framework for Thoracic Spine Exercise Prescription in Sport, a Systematic Review, and Narrative Synthesis. And before we get into that, though, I did a little bit of a pop quiz with her and myself, just to get things going. So what we did was list the normal ranges of motion for thoracic spine. Generally, we don't always think about these things, but it's a good refresher. Flexion, so it's 20 to 45 degrees is a normal range. Extension is 25 to 45. I can't imagine you see too many people with 45 degrees, but maybe your specific population, such as gymnasts or dancers, or your classic hypermobile people might be able to get into that position. With side flexion, we have 20 to 40 degrees, and then rotation is around 30 degrees. Again, these ranges of motion are always challenging to really isolate, but that's what Newman in 2010 suggested. The next thing was, of course, whenever you have somebody with a thoracic spine issue and you're looking to clear red flags, or you're looking to do an assessment, it's important to understand red flags. So some that we talked about were trauma or night pain in the area, unrelenting constant pain, some of these things such as malignancy, osteoporosis, so maybe you're working with an older population, previous fracture, over 50, under 20, structural deformity, and things like that. Now to the paper, they were really just looking into the main prescribed exercises that you would see in a sporting population. So what they really were looking at was, they're identifying the commonly prescribed exercises that we see on YouTube or social media or just in books around this area. And what I really liked was the framework to support decision making, and that's one of their aims, their objectives, and we'll go into that in a moment. Their methods were kind of classic that you would see in a lot of systematic reviews or syntheses, is that they scoured through a lot of your classic journals, and also looked at social media, which I found was interesting. But again, I think that's where a lot of people, clinicians or patients and athletes and people that exercise themselves, get their some of their exercises from. So that's fair enough. It's very practical. And the next thing is really here. This is something that a big part of when I was reading this paper I looked into quite extensively. I mean, you'll notice that, there's static, there's dynamic, but there's also mobility. We have motor control, work capacity, and strength. And sometimes us as clinicians don't necessarily bucket those ideas into our training program, specifically when we're looking at the thoracic spine. Some people are always like, okay, mobility. We're not always considering the other aspects of it. So what these sections really do is help categorize exercises into areas where we can then plug and play if somebody needs something. I think this is really good because most people would just say, yeah, I'm giving them a few thoracic spine exercises, but they may not necessarily think about really those 4 categories or even a category in itself. We'll just kind of do a shotgun spray approach, which is fair enough. I think I've done a lot of that in the past, which I'm hoping not to do in the future. But so that was more the enlightening or practical part of this paper, is that, hey, maybe it's chipping away at some habits that we may have. So yeah, my key takeaways, I think this paper, just again, I'm reiterating, but maybe we should try to categorize the exercises and not just, yes, I'm working on thoracic spine in general, but you're being very specific. So you're working on motor control with one person, but you're also thinking about the work capacity, and then you're giving them something for strength. So you're not just working on mobility. You're giving them exercises for all of those qualities, because ultimately we know If we just work on mobility all day, we might not be able to control that. So we need to consider motor control, we need to consider strength and work capacity. So it's practical paper in my eyes. Um, the next thing is it kind of gives you a model to go off of then. Again, we're talking about these specific qualities. You think about 4 of them, not just one. And ultimately, I think this gives your patient or athlete likely what they need, and what that is usually an individualized or specific plan, right? It's not, in my eyes, always good enough just to have a generic plan. Sometimes we need to be, a lot of the time, as much as we can, would be to be individualized as much as possible. And that's probably what we should be doing, right? It is more specific to the patient, more specific to the athlete, and then we can really know, like, hey, we gave them X exercise for this quality. Maybe they didn't. Maybe that didn't work. Maybe we know. Okay, we tried that specific quality. Maybe we need to go more into motor control or more into endurance or blah blah blah. So yeah, let me know if you like this video or not. Not to say that I have a ton of people watching this. However, if you liked it, give me a comment. Say you enjoyed it. I think I'll do this once in a while because I think it may be helpful for myself. Thanks.